Oh, let me get my
Look,
glasses.
it says, look,
Even though I'm gonna have to take them off because I can't see.
look. That's what my hoodie says. I can do this all day,
Oh,
like Captain America.
oh God.
Y'all keep messing with me. I can do this all day. That's what my haters do this all day.
Where so are we so where did the superhero stuff come from?
Well, Captain America in particular. So I have always felt a kinship with Captain America because he always does the hard thing, which is the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through my daughter, because she is also obsessed with him, that I learned the true history of Captain America.
Okay,
So
what is the
the
history?
true history is, so there were two Jewish guys, Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, who created Captain America in the 1940s. But here's what's interesting. The most famous cover of Captain America is him punching Hitler. Well, they actually made that comic before America entered World War II. They got death threats and had to get police protection because people don't remember this because history's always been written. Before we entered World War II, most people supported Germany. There was a huge
Mm.
ground flux. And so in historically, people are like, oh, Captain America fought the Nazis. It's like he fought the Nazis when fighting the Nazis wasn't popular.
Hmm.
And in every stage where America in comics, well, in real life, when America has had a crux point, whether it be the Vietnam War, the Korean War, whether it be throughout the ages, Captain America, who's the symbol of America, has always taken the controversial position. And it's really interesting because one of the most recent people to write Captain America was Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Mm.
And he had a whole situation in the comics where Captain America was standing up for people that were protesting the government. And there was a whole situation where he was talking to a general, and the general had this famous line that Coates wrote where he said, be a good soldier and stand down, Captain. And Captain America said, I'll stand down when Washington stands up. So,
Mm.
like, people think he's like a symbol of, like, awful patriotism,
Mm-hmm.
but really Captain America is the hope of what America's supposed to be, not necessarily what it is.
So we just thought that you just like comics.
I love
So
comics too, but
I
I
get
love
that,
Captain America in
there's a backstory.
particular. Yeah,
There's a backstory. Okay,
yeah.
all right. Well, the JP's team has come with bearing gifts.
Yes.
Can we sip together? What's the
Exa-
art? Give me the art of
The art of
sipping.
the sip. So you have to turn yourself towards the camera. You look at the camera, and then you sip.
And I have my glasses too. Okay,
Yeah, I know, but you can't see anything with the glasses.
I can't. So I'm gonna get them.
So switch to your real glasses, like me.
Yeah, yeah.
But we both have sight challenges.
So we're gonna keep sipping,
We'll keep sipping.
but we've got a lot to cover.
Okay.
So thank you first of all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.
I'm in a very rarefied air, being in Maroon with you. And
Yes, thank you, sir. I
feel very.
appreciate that.
This is such a wonderful space.
Yeah.
Everyone should come to Maroon. It's awesome.
Well, they should.
They should.
They
They should.
should. So we have JP in the building. First of all, we know that you are, um, if not the most, one of, but definitely one of the most vocal council members on city council.
Well, I would say vocal. If you mean by amount of words spoken, Eugene Green has me beat.
That's true.
But if
No,
you're
no, no,
talking
you know
about
what I mean.
loud and like
So,
talking, then
but
it's me.
you have been kind of like self-anointed as like the watchdog,
Yes,
right? And so you do consider
I
yourself to
consider
be the
myself the
watchdog?
watchdog. Yes.
Okay. So if so, where did that personality, where did that mindset, that watchdog mindset come
Well,
from?
it's more of an issue of like my parents, my
I
dad, my
do.
mom,
I do.
and I have a weird combination of both because my dad has this inexplicable need to always speak his mind,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom is a very quiet but observant person, and I think I kind of got a combination of both in that I observe and I watch and I ask questions and I do it loudly and don't care what people think about it. And I think for me, through all stages of government that I've been able to serve, I know that if you're an elected official, are supposed to have a finite amount of time in government. So you should really judge yourself by what you've been able to accomplish while you're there. And particularly on the council, you have 2 terms. So for me, my goal was what definitive things can I change in significant ways permanently to make the city better in my first 4 years. And that led to a lot of conflict just because we have generational institutional problems that are fixable. But what I found in my first 4 years is people just don't want to make hard decisions and fix them because fixing things requires conflict. I mean, it's kind of that basic idea. Like, if you look at all of the touch points in U.S. history or state history, very few things changed without conflict. Even the civil rights movement, though it was a peaceful conflict, it was conflict. If you go along to get along, nothing ever changes. In the city of New Orleans, there's so much that needs to change. I mean, I feel like I accomplished a lot, but even though I did that, there's so much left to do. I mean, when I came here from the state level and looked at the way mayoral appointees were done and the way that mayors could literally appoint anyone in the dead of night without any kind of requirement that someone check a resume or make sure the person's qualified, it just seemed ridiculous to me that we'd have a confirmation process. And when I suggested that, everyone lost their minds. You had people who were like, it's a council overreach, it's going to slow down all of government. And lo and behold, we're 2 years into it, and 90% of the mayor's appointees got through with little to no fanfare because just having a confirmation process means mayors don't put up trash candidates because they have to be reviewed by the public. So that was one of those things when I suggested it, the amount of outrage that came out of it was disproportionate to really what I was doing, and nothing bad happened. We just kind of improved government.
So, with this, platform that we have with Civic, so we allow people to bring or, send in questions and comments and things like that. And so we, we have folks who say, I don't like JP.
Yep.
Right?
A lot of those.
You know that.
A lot of those.
And I've been sitting at tables that have, or people have said that. But recently I had someone who put things in perspective for me. And when my elders speak, I listen.
Okay.
Right? And so I have a little bit of pride for you.
Uh-oh.
Do we have elders here in the building today?
Oh no. You got a surprise guest who's gonna jump out here on me. Oh my God. You did not bring out.
Come on. Pull your chair up. Pull your chair up.
Just to be clear, you can blame everything I do on this young woman next to me.
So we have Sabrina Mays with us this morning. And for those that don't know what I was talking about, I was at a meeting and Sabrina was there, and she got all of us together on JP, right? And I've heard it before. I've heard people say, I don't like JP, right? But Sabrina said, she said, he has been like this from a child.
This is my third, fourth grade teacher right here.
Right.
So literally, she's known me since I was nothing but a little body and a giant head.
Yeah.
It was like I was like an orange on a toothpick.
That's what she said.
Yes.
And so, Sabrina, tell us what he was like, fourth grade, and how do you see him now on the dais?
No, he's not, and I say this unapologetically, he has not changed. As a fourth grader, running for office in the class, right?
I don't think I won that race, did I?
No.
You lost?
I lost.
Wait a minute, because Georgette won.
Georgette Smith beat me.
Right, but they had a whole month of debates and developing their platform. It was a real campaign.
Yeah.
And so, JP's circle was Jesse Hasselkamp, Brian Masters, Kamayu, Abby, Gabby, Mia Eubanks, and
Mia.
Sheila Lex.
Wow.
Yeah.
You remember all of these names?
I do.
She remembers all the names.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes,
But anyway, and so he lost and Georgette won.
Yeah.
So that was an elite group because they played the Dungeons and Dragons, they played their chess, they challenged each other intellectually, right? So they come up with wanting to impeach Georgette.
Y'all like impeaching people now.
Yes,
Okay.
that was part of the process.
Follow the process.
Part of the process.
Didn't win that either.
Yes.
Didn't win that one either.
No, what happened, Judge Jack came to me crying and she said, they want to get me out of office. I said, you better not let them. I said, this is part of the system. This is how the system works.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so Esme and Gabby came to me, and no, and talked to me about it. And I said, I'm not gonna block the process. This is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but what you did, what you're doing, I don't like. I said, and it's an evil thing because it's not. You're not doing it because of the greater good. You're doing it for selfish reasons. And so even grown women with children, so the slaves, you call them people. I call you people. I
Yeah.
said, because they
That
organize.
process. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The
organized.
passage.
But JP has always been very he isn't a procrastinator.
He just said that. He just actually said that before we started.
Procrastinator, but when the stuff came before me, every hour got it, every single thought. He's always been an intellect, you know, and concerned about rights, you know.
And we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah.
Well, and just to be clear, Esme and Gabby are two of my dearest friends, but they were also my bullies.
Yeah.
They used to bully the hell out of me. They had a whole song about how big my head was.
Uh-oh.
They still know it too. If you ever see Esme Roberts or Gabby Wilson, you could ask them what was the song they used to sing about my big head, and they still know the words. Just saying, they're dear friends now, but they were my childhood bullies.
So look, I had to. Sabrina saw that you were on, gonna be here this morning, and she said, "Listen, I gotta let folks know, like, what was he like, and why is he the way that he is?" And so I thank Sabrina.
She knows she knows both my parents, so she knows I'm both of them like in one person.
Yeah. So
But he
Sabrina.
tries to stay true. But the thing that I'm most proud about is that he doesn't mind taking the heat for what he believes in because he's done it through diligence. So he's not gonna come at it side.
Yeah. So we
She's the
thank you,
best.
ma'am. We thank you.
Let's see.
So now that we know why you
Why
are
I'm
the
that
way
way.
that you are,
Yes.
we have some hard questions for you today.
I have no doubt.
I think we talked about this last week when I saw you.
Mhm.
So listen. This was one of the sessions for Civic Sip that people actually sent real hard
I'm sure
questions,
they did.
right? So let's talk about Entergy and Delta.
Entergy and Delta. Let's talk about that.
So the Entergy Delta utility sale, of course, you already said that you call yourself a watchdog.
Yep.
The council advanced the sale of the Entergy gas utility to Delta, right?
Yes.
Which we know that Delta is a private equity firm, right?
Yes.
So,
Well, Delta, who engineered the sale, was a private equity firm, but the company running it is actually a legitimate energy company.
exactly.
So the sale was made to Delta, but it's now a gas building company.
Yeah. So your fellow watchdogs have said that this sale is going to raise rates, right? And I know that there was negotiation with the parties. What are the protections for the people? Because people are confused. First of all, Delta came out of nowhere from some, right? How did you secure the citizens? How did you protect the citizens in this process?
Let's first talk about utility regulation in general.
Yes.
So, as a regulator, our ability to regulate energy is derived from Congress, and we are overseen by an organization called the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Every decision we make as a regulatory body, there's a reason why they call all of our action items dockets, because they're basically legal filings. So whenever a utility wants to do something, part of the reason why we have a council utility regulatory office and we have advisors is because they essentially make a legal filing, and we have to challenge the legal filing to say whether or not it is legally viable. So when Entergy decides to sell an asset, we have to, when we're analyzing it, see A, is it best for the residents, but B, what is the legal rationale for blocking? And so the challenge we were put in is that every other jurisdiction in which there was a sale of gas assets to Delta, which would become Delta Utilities, they all passed theirs before ours. So every time a jurisdiction signed off on Delta, the legal position of the council to block the Delta sale became more and more tenuous. Now, there were a cadre of watchdog groups that said, hey, you should buy the gas utility. And there were two kind of thought processes in that. There was one group, one very vocal group that said we should buy all the gas utilities and then cut them off and go pure electric. That was crazy. It was crazy because, numbers is numbers. For us to buy the gas assets was over $1 billion. And if we were to cut off all the gas assets, we would have to reimburse every single person with a gas appliance, replace it with electrical appliance, and additionally buy more energy off the grid, which would have exploded that cost from $1 billion to over $2.5–3 billion.
Why not buy it and not switch to electric?
Well, remember, if we buy it, it's over $1 billion. You know how we pay for it? We put on your rates. So when we analyze the cost of A, buying the gas assets, then B, setting up the infrastructure to run them, the biggest concern people have is how much their rates would be, and you'd be adding thousands of dollars to people's rates to purchase them. So we look at everything for how it directly impacts ratepayers. And to stand up just a gas utility, not a gas and electric, and the profit margin on gas is very slim. So
which is why I don't understand why, if the margins are slim, why did they want it?
Well, that's a question for Delta
Yeah.
as far as why they thought it was a good idea. The reality is that if you are a massive company and you're managing the gas assets across multiple states, that margin can be healthier because you have one part of your market subsidizing other parts. If we just bought New Orleans and it's just gas, it doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense. So we were presented with the sale. We were presented with a legal argument for the sale. And the two things we did to protect ratepayers was, first, we made Delta step into Energy's shoes. Energy was not eligible to produce an argument for a rate increase until the year after next. So Delta could not come to us for a rate increase. They had to step in Energy's shoes. And just like Energy, when Energy would have been eligible for a rate increase, they can come toward us for a rate increase. Whenever a rate increase is put before the council, like I said, it's a legal document. Same as with Energy. They say, here's why we need a rate increase. We as a council in the last rate increase, we spent over a year on it. We look at it and we make the argument as to why their rate increase is not viable. Now, you have people all the time who go, well, you should zero out every rate increase and never give someone a rate increase. Here's the problem with that. If we don't make a legal argument against a rate increase, that rate increase then goes to civil district court, where the Energy can argue we should get our rate increase anyway. If we don't have a legal argument on the books or a way to mitigate that, it is more than likely they'll get their original rate increase, which almost every time is significantly higher than what we ultimately argue them down to. And so, and remember, when you're going through a legal process, whether it's the sale of Delta or whether it's a rate increase, it goes from civil district court to the appeals court to the Supreme Court. Now in the Supreme Court, we have one New Orleans person and 6 non-New Orleans Republicans. So we have to do everything possible at the council level to make sure our I's are dotted and T's are crossed so that we are legally in good standing. The problem is that with the Delta sale, there wasn't a legal argument to block it. Unless we wanted to go buy the gas utilities, which would have raised everyone's rates exponentially.
So no legal argument. Okay, I get it. But there are some that argue, well, why didn't they just defer it and try to get a better deal or better terms for the people?
Well, one, if we deferred it without proper legal standing, we would be open to damages for injuring the sale because every other market had approved it. So it wasn't as simple. We are not. People have this idea that we are the supreme overlords over energy and energy regulation. We are within the four corners of the authority Congress has given us. And as a regulator, we have to be tremendously neutral in how we make our decisions. There's a reason why I don't spend every council utility meeting blasting energy. If I blasted energy on docket matters, they could make the argument at civil district court that I had pre-decided a docket matter because I hated energy. And that would strengthen their argument to raise your rates, to do whatever the hell they want to do. We have to be very careful. Now, on non-docket matters, like let's say reliability, like let's say, for example, the light and actuators are all failing, and I attack them on that. If that's not a docketed matter, that's me offering my opinion. But there's also kind of an argument, people don't understand, why don't we have regular energy utility meetings? We have meetings when there is an item we have to discuss or the docket is right. It's like a court. Our utility committee is more like the first level, like a magistrate court before you go to a district court judge. We meet when a docket is right to rule on something. Occasionally we have meetings outside of that because something else has come up, but we can't meet monthly on dockets that aren't ripe yet because Hero, Energy, our advisors, they're all negotiating and creating the record for the docket for us to rule on it. It would be like if you have a hearing, let's say you've got a court case pending in front of a judge. The judge made everybody meet every day to talk about it, but didn't rule on anything and offered his opinion beforehand repeated. That would completely torpedo the ultimate decision we made.
Any hindsight in terms of the rollout of Delta? How that, when you go back, like, would you have done something different?
Well, we are really concerned, and we are looking into the customer service charge.
Yes.
The customer service charge is something that was not disclosed to us, and that is something that has given us great pause because the position that we were told was they would step into energy shoes. Now, part of what they are going to argue, and we're going to have to see it when we analyze the docket, is was there a buried customer service charge that Entergy was charging for gas that we just didn't see because Energy buried it in the bill? They stepped in Energy shoes. What we're working on right now is an analysis of the customer service charge to see if this is them not stepping in Energy shoes. And had we known they were going to do this customer service charge, we would have cleared it up in the approval process, but that was something that we were not disclosed of.
All right. So here's a question that came in September. You skipped the utilities forum where citizens wanted answers, calling it biased. Isn't a real watchdog supposed to face tough questions in the public? Tell me how you respond to that.
Well, it's easy. The person running the forum was a guy named Jesse who works for the Alliance for Affordable Energy. He not only donated to one of my opponents, but he is an active supporter of them. And I actually sent an email to the organizers explaining why I was not attending because both Jesse as well as the Greater New Orleans the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance are supporters of my opponent. Why would I go to a forum that is put together by supporters of my opponent? How is that a level and fair playing field? Every forum, first off, utilities have come up at every forum we've been in. So it's not like there hasn't been multiple opportunities to have those conversations. But when you tell the organizers of a forum, and by the way, I disclosed to several members of that forum well beforehand, I had significant concerns with people who are supposed to be in unbiased nonprofits playing in politics. I mean, with the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance, I just found out they run a C4 dark money pack, and the attack ads they're running on me, they don't disclose who's paying for them. So all that proved in hindsight was that really that forum, based upon Andrew Morris and the Housing Alliance, that was really an attempt to get sound bites on record for the attack ads they already had planned. So I stand by skipping that forum because hindsight has shown that the people running it were tremendously biased.
Okay. So let me move to the the grain terminal.
Yes.
So of course, the council, well, actually you opposed the grain terminal after the residents came and protested, right? The project. Tell me, give me your take on the grain terminal. And I think the question that came in was, well, if the citizens had not pulled the alarm, you guys would have pushed it through. Is that true?
No,
Okay.
that's not true. Well, first off, citizen democratic government should always be responsive to citizens, but I've been opposed to the lock expansion in the lower Ninth Ward and upper Ninth Ward since I was a rep in 2006. I'm very cognizant of what's going on down there and the effort to industrialize a residential area. And we would have absolutely been opposed to any heavy industrialization that would have negatively impacted residents in the area. Part of what we really encouraged in our last resolution of 2 against the grain terminal is there are plenty of other locations that are in the control of the Port of New Orleans that are not in residential areas to have high density industrial development. They have a lot of options, for example, at the former Avondale site, which has rail access, which would allow for expansion. Really, part of what doesn't make sense about Sunrise Foods going there is when you look at the neighborhood and look at the property the port has access to, there's no area for expansion. So not only are you putting a grain terminal in the middle of the neighborhood, for the company doing the grain terminal, they obviously are going to want, if it's successful, to have the option to expand it, and they're landlocked, and they are, for a lot of different reasons, locked by zoning as to what they can do, so it just doesn't make sense to that community. But no, my record has been consistent. As the chair of the environmental committee in the Senate, I was the person for the first time ever that made the Senate Environmental Committee go to the site of natural disasters like the Lake Maurepas area where AGL was building salt domes to remind people of the fact that in the 1980s, the collapse of an oil rig in the middle of that lake made the Mississippi River go backwards for several minutes. So I appreciate that some people have very short memories, but I'm the one that authored the legislation that requires that DEQ test school sites for lead before they allow schools to be built. So I mean, my position on various environmental issues is well stated and well in the record, even if people aren't paying attention to it.
Yeah. So actually, the person that sent this question in, I guess the second part of it was around citizens being at the table before the deal is cut.
Well, I mean, the challenge you have there, and it's really a challenge with the way the Constitution is written, is when the state of Louisiana or state agencies own properties, our authority over them is very, very limited. For example, state property is not subject to zoning law. So when it comes to the challenge of whether or not citizens can have access to when the state is doing a deal, that's something you have to get changed at the legislative level, really at the constitutional level, because sort of like the ongoing battle that is Charity Hospital. Charity Hospital is owned by the LSU Foundation for LSU. We're always playing catch up, even as a city, as to what's going on with Charity, because we don't have control over the site.
How do we fix that? How do we, when I say fix it, how do we keep people informed on, hey, this is state, this is where you should be directing your questions, your concerns?
Jade, to be very honest, we do tell people that.
Okay.
And the problem is that because people don't understand and they're not educated, largely by a variety of different reasons, on those differences, there is always an effort to pass the buck. So like legislators know that when it comes to state property, it's them. I cannot tell you how many times certain legislators have sent state zoning issues to us knowing that we have no control over. Literally, the only real power we have over Charity Hospital is the air rights over the streets around it. But when it comes to whatever they do at that site, they could turn that site into pretty much anything without us having any oversight over it, because the state constitution gives that authority. So I mean, the challenge is whenever we find out about things, whenever the state deems to tell us those things, we share it, but they're not obligated to do that.
Yeah.
And that is very intentional, not just in New Orleans, but across the entire state of Louisiana. The state prefers to have its own control over its property, and they do not want cities to interfere in it. And I
Yeah.
mean, the only way to change that would be Constitution. And honestly, I think there would be a lot of support across the state for having local control over more state sites, because you don't want a grain terminal in the middle of a neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right. So I think one of my, especially around election season, I think that, elected officials, we do our best, well, y'all's best to inform people during elections because you're campaigning. And this is not just,
Right.
germane to you, it's just in general. But you all do a great job with educating people during elections, but in between, it's like that.
But see, I would push back on that. I mean, literally, these videos I cut have been going since.
Yeah, yeah.
But in those videos, to be clear, those videos started because I met with a class of young and older people, Ed Shervanek's political science class at UNO, and I was asking them about why they didn't vote in the presidential election. And many of these people, I said, "Who voted?" Raise your hands. And like two people. And I was like, "What the hell?" And they said, "We did not vote because a lot of the people who think they can convince us to vote one way or another do not meet us in the mediums that we get our information from." And they specifically said Instagram. Instagram is where I watch interesting videos, I get engaged, and that was the moment that I want to say the first video I ever cut was on the school board settlement. That is when I started doing these videos to educate people.
Agreed.
And that was well before the election. But what I will say
Yeah.
is this. What is difficult during an election, and I would say we do a terrible job of educating people during an election, because one of my frustrations with the forum setup is that
Yeah.
forums, they give you 1 minute to answer
Yeah.
very complex questions. And I'll tell you, going back to utility regulation, one of my opponents said repeatedly at multiple forums he was going to make energy forgive all arrearages. One, that is not legally possible. You cannot make a private company with the authority given to us by the federal government eat debt. What energy would do if you tried to forgive arrearages is they would cancel out the arrearages and pass all of that money onto the rates of the people paying their bills. Another one of my opponents said that the settlement that we got from Grand Gulf could have been used to build housing. That is completely illegal. Any money you receive as a settlement or a fine from utility has to either be credits on bills or being reinvested into the system. Now, the problem you have as an elected official who knows the answer, I'm given 1 minute to answer a question. Do I waste every answer explaining why their entire understanding of regulation is wrong? Or do I answer the question? What I chose to do in every forum is answer the question.
Yeah, but I also think that, yeah, and you created a platform for us on Instagram, right, or other platforms. But I think that even with forums, like there should be some follow up because you only get a minute.
Well,
Right?
the Urban League actually had a superior format in that they gave us a minute to answer questions, but if your opponents called you out or said something
You had
about
the
you,
opportunity.
you have to. And that was a superior forum because when they would say things like, "Well, you didn't do X,"
Yeah.
it gave me the ability to explain it. But most forums, they don't do that. A, because they're trying to keep the forum tight, or B, because some forums do not intentionally want you to be able to answer the actual questions.
Right. But I think that, whether it is summaries, white papers, whatever, right? Like, because here's the thing, when your opposition, right, actually puts things out, like you just said, that's not illegal or not, whatever, right? But there's misinformation out there possibly. And how do you stop that?
You don't. I mean, the reality is
You
that,
have to, though.
the reality is that I've used my platform at times to respond to gross misinformation. But the thing is this, everyone who hears the misinformation is not going to hear the correct information. And the problem is like, for example, a lot of misinformation there. One of my opponents talked about money that I got from energy and donations.
I've heard
And
that.
right. And Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance put a mailer out saying all this money that I got from energy um, in donations. What they failed to state is that was money I received as a legislator over a decade ago, and I had not received a single donation from any utilities I regulate 5 years before I ran for council. And what's interesting is that the same people, like for example, Grand Oil Housing gave Hayes and
Right.
Selected,
The letter.
they're currently receiving massive energy donations in their current roles. So either receiving any donation from energy is disqualifying and you disqualify everybody, or you put those donations into context. I haven't gotten an energy donation in a decade, didn't get one 5 years before I ran for council, and the fact that you see that kind of misinformation, it's disheartening, but that's politics. I mean, politics are your opponents tell half-truths, or in some cases, no truths, and they challenge you to correct it, but you know that old saying, it's like when someone asks you, how often do you beat your wife? You may not beat your wife, but just answering the question makes it seem like the question was plausible. And so when you see some of the attacks your opponents make on you, they're almost hoping that you'll engage with them to give the misinformation oxygen. So I found personally, if there is actually an attack worthy of merit, I'd bother to respond to it, but when it's just blatant misinformation, you have to constantly remind people of the work you've done and hope they make the right decision.
All right. Let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about trash.
Oh, trash. I've talked about trash enough for a lifetime, but okay.
So I guess frame this trash contract. It is so complex. People don't understand it.
You're talking about the French Quarter trash.
Yes, right?
Okay, let's go back to basics.
And I guess my overarching question is, was it overreach?
No.
Tell me why.
So first, after the effort was made by the mayor to get rid of Metro Disposal and Richards Disposal and those efforts to push them out, the council realized we had no oversight in that process. So we passed an ordinance in the wake of the mayor getting rid of two of the only black millionaires in the city to make the council put in the position to have to approve massive sanitation contracts. So that whole power came out because the mayor forced out Metro and Richard with a lot of misinformation because you had two historic black contractors that were forced out. So we got that authority 2 years. No one complained about it. Mayor didn't veto it. It was the law. Then we fast forward to the French Quarter trash contract. The council really did not get involved in that until it was heard in committee and it was going forward for consideration. As you may recall, problem one was when Mr. Alvin Richard showed up and said, I have been forced out the contract. And that is when the council's kind of radar went up, like, what are you talking about? Because in the grading process, this contract was graded as 100% DBE participation because it was Henry Consulting and Richards Disposal, two black companies. Well, we were not notified that that had changed until the contract was being approved and Mr. Richard showed up. So then we started to dig in the meeting in real time. We said, well, who's they been replaced with? This group called Clean Force. And so we're like, who the hell is Clean Force? And so then the Clean Force representative, the owner, came to the table to discuss Clean Force. The Clean Force representative was a white woman from Metairie. So flag went up again, second flag, like, whoa, okay, this is kind of weird. Then we find out during the course of her conversation, she doesn't own any trucks. She's subbing her entire contract to a white guy from Monroe. That's from the third flag up. We're like, wait a second. How is this 100% DB contract if the person making all the money is a white guy from Monroe? Matt Torrey, the head of sanitation, said, well, our position is if you win the contract, we don't care what you do afterwards. That is when, on the record, I completely lost my shit and said, this is the problem all DBs have with the city.
Yes.
That you show up, you win the contract, and then you force the DB out. Then what happened next was no council member, none of them, not myself or the other six, would author the motion to have a vote on Mr. Henry's contract. So the focus has been on myself and one other council member, but there were 7 of us and no one would touch the contract. And that's where it stalled. And so then after, let's see, they came back several months later. This was like, that hearing was in November. After litigation had already started, after the case was in appeals, Mr. Henry showed back up with Mr. Richard and said, we worked it out. And then several other problems hit. One, the settlement with Richard's disposal was a confidential settlement. As an attorney, how am I going to give you a multi-year $75 million contract when the concern we had with Mr. Richard and his split on who was getting what profit, you are now hiding in a public contract with a confidentiality clause? That does not make sense. Everything about public contracting is public record. You can't say this part's confidential. The second issue that came up was we then looked into the contract and a bunch of other red flags went up. First, the city was prepaying Henry Consulting for trash pickup. That's insane. We have 4 other districts picking up trash, including Mr. Richard and Algiers. When they pick up trash in September, they bill us on September, the last day of September, and we have 30 days to pay them. In this one contract, we were letting Mr. Henry bill us on the first day of September for September, and we had to pay him before the month was up. We have never prepaid for trash pickup ever. That is not in the city's interest. No one can explain where that came from. The second issue was the bond for performance. They had given Mr. Henry a half a bond, not a full bond. That legally makes no sense. A performance bond means that if for some reason he cannot perform, a bond company pays us the money so that a third party can do the work. Why would we prepay someone ahead of time, and then if they mess up, we have to eat half the cost to replace them? These were red flags that the city could not answer. It was a not well negotiated contract, and what we told the city at that time is just rebid it. Rebid the contract so that it meets all this criteria, that the person's not being prepaid, they're not paying half a bond, and you cannot have resolutions to public contracts be hid behind confidentiality agreements. So, I mean, we were holding that contract to the same scrutiny as all the rest of them.
But in the beginning, all of this you just talked about, it started with DBE, right?
Right.
Like a DBE. This is a 100% DBE contract. But what we now have, at least for now, is not a DBE, right? So it's almost like, are we cutting off our noses?
But Jade, who picked IV Waste to pick up the trash from Red Quarter?
The administration did.
Just want to clear that up for the listeners out there. We did not pick IV Waste. They picked IV Waste. And I would tell you that part of the challenge we have in the collaborative would speak to this. The administration regularly waives DBE requirements whenever it suits them. The whole reason IV Waste is still there is because the administration refused to rebid the contract. They could have used the same DB criteria as it did previously and picked another company. They chose to support Mr. Henry's various lawsuits and drag this process out. The reason why IV Waste is still picking up trash is because the administration won't rebid the contract. Had they rebid the contract, the same DB requirements would have been in place, and you likely would have had another DB, or Mr. Henry could have met the criteria and won the contract again in a transparent way. The other issue, which is very interesting, is that the level of services being provided by IV Waste is more than the original contract. And something we put out there is that I think the original contract was probably insufficient because it did not have the level of pressure washing going on or the like. And when they rebid the contract, it should reflect the expectation of the CBD in French Quarter and not be the weird kind of chopped up version that it was previously.
Okay. So you talk about red flags. So as a small business, right?
Right.
I think the whole trash issue really is, it's a reflection of the DBE process.
100% agree.
Across the board, right? So just in the trash, issue or whatever, what did you learn in that for DBEs, and how can you guys, because the red flags that you saw in that, we see that every
Well,
single day
here,
in DBE.
here's the challenge. So,
Nobody's protecting them.
well, we've passed several ordinances to strengthen the requirements of DBEs in this process. What is frustrating is the administration and procurement refuse to acknowledge any of them. The collaborative has literally written laws with the council at the state and local level, and they are complete. I mean, honestly, one of the big things that I would seek to change in the next term is to really eliminate the mayor's ability to use unilateral waivers, because the best faith effort, and I know you know what I'm talking about, whenever you do a contract with the city of New Orleans, you have a best faith effort to try and find a DB. That is not defined. And what we found over and over again is that a large company will call one group, and if they say we can't do it, they go, we tried. And that allows them to trigger a waiver to say, I tried. I think either A, I would rather just throw out best faith effort, because the reality is there are so many talented and qualified DBs in the city. I really find it impossible to believe that there's a DB component to a contract you cannot find a qualified person to do it. The second thing I would do is say waivers should be the exception, not the rule, and that if you're going to pursue a waiver, the waiver has to be granted by the council as well. Because I'll tell you, if you truly have a business that is so specialized that no DB can do it, why wouldn't you want to make sure and kick the tires that that waiver, if you make the requirement that it has to go through a council committee and a council vote, that is so much public scrutiny that any DB who could do that work would immediately expose that group as being a liar. Now, if you've got some weird company that has a specific AI, whatever, then it's not an issue because no one else can do it. But you have to really make it the exception, not the rule. And what we've seen in this 4 years is that it is the rule. The waivers happen, and there's absolutely no effort to go behind to make sure the DBEs were given the work they were granted. Because, for example, we found out that Mr. Richard was replaced with Clean Force, who was then subbing it to a white guy from Monroe. We're like, well, where's the governance there? And for the head of sanitation to say on the record, we don't check. Once the contract's awarded, we're out of it. Well, what's the point of having a DB if you can pretend to have one on the front end, switch them out, and the city's position under an administration is, I don't care as long as the work's done.
Yeah, I think that a lot of small business owners look at the trash issue and said, look, that's been happening to us, right?
100% agree.
Since the day before forever, right? And so I think that that's really a big area where the council needs to, you know, when you guys talk about accountability and you as a watchdog, right? That's something that somebody needs to be watching, because it's an unchecked process.
Well, I mean, and let's not bury the lead, which is that the DB office was imploded about a year ago when the head of the DB office was fired, and she was never really replaced, and it's in free fall. So, I mean, the watchdog inside of government that's supposed to make sure DB compliance is happening was pretty much the head was cut off of that department, and it doesn't exist. Right. So I think one of the big issues, we have confirmation hearings for the next administration, is talking about how are we going to comply with the law? Because the laws that we have on the books, the ordinances are very clear. Responsible bidder, which is pro-union, which allows to have requirements that we have contractors that are working with apprentices and unions to train up people. That is also the law that the administration regularly sidesteps. There's all these different things that are good law that we have to make it harder, if not impossible, for any administration in this regard.
To waive it. Yep. All right, last thing. So this is my last question. You've built a reputation as the watchdog of others in city government. What is the single toughest accountability measure you are willing to apply to yourself?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the biggest accountability measure is that, as we said at the beginning of this interview when y'all rolled out Miss Mays on me, I am willing to be the council person this city needs, even if it makes me unpopular. To be candid, I could have been a super nice guy I could have not taken a stand on anything, and I could have worried about reelection and been a very different person. I mean, there are plenty of council people who speak softly, who don't make waves, and because of that, they have a much easier time during reelection. What I commit to all of you is I'm gonna be the same person no matter who the mayor is. My biggest accountability is whether or not you think that the work I'm doing is improving the city. And that's election time. I mean, the reality is my reelection is difficult because, as you said, some people just don't like my style. They don't like the fact that I'm blunt, that I'm candid. I have been accused by many people of hating black women, though my mother is a black woman. And I say to that, if a person is the mayor, if the person's the head of a department, should I treat them differently because they're a woman? Because that's sexist. I mean, if you're the mayor of the city of New Orleans, I treat you like you're the mayor of the city of New Orleans. If you're the head of the Department of Revenue and we are disagreeing over policy, what is better, that I treat them as an equal or that I'm condescending and patronizing? There is no good answer. My answer is I treat everyone the same, full stop. If you're the head of a department, I treat you like you're a grown-ass person who's the head of a department. And if people are frustrated by that department, I mean, if people feel like that department, if it's safety and permits, DPW is not doing its job, I come at you the same way. And I would say the biggest accountability measure is I govern like I'm trying to fix things, not like I'm trying to get reelected. And that makes me, going back to comic books, it's like, or movies, it's like that scene in The Dark Knight, at the end of The Dark Knight, where Batman goes, Harvey Dent is the leader, is the person this city wants, and Batman's the person you need. When it comes to fixing the city, I'm not the person you want, but I'm gonna be the person you need. And if that requires me to be the villain of certain people, I mean, I'm here for it. I mean, what I care about is that when I leave the city council, whether it's Saturday or whether it's in 4 years, I will point to the things that I definitively did to change the city for the better. That is how I've always been as a legislator. The reason why repealing non-unanimous juries was not popular. I mean, I have DAs and sheriffs to this day that hate my guts. The NRA, I think, would gladly have me driven off the road, off a bridge, over protecting domestic violence victims by limiting access to firearms. I've always done the hard things knowing I might be hated for it, but I keep doing the hard things. So my accountability metric is I'm going to continue to make hard, unpopular decisions and stances. I use my platform to try to explain it, but I'm never going to shy away from doing what needs to be done because I'm scared of the political pushback. At the end of the day, I'm a student of history. The arc of history is long. People may not know I've done good things till my kids are my age. Yeah. But history is history.
That's our time.
It's our time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap.
Well.